some way possible to have answers to what on earth happened to us growing up as kids. And so it's not just, hey, this is fun, spookiness is fun, but it's like we want answers. And so trying to use instruments to be able to figure that out is a good thing. So I used to run a museum in Lehigh called the Hutchings Museum Institute. David's wife is currently on the board of directors there. Extremely haunted place, and that was where we got a lot of our ghost hunting 101 to try to test things because, for example, there's a jail there where there has been more than one death. There's a lot of, that's the museum itself. But it gave us a kind of a controlled setting where we could try and learn and fine-tune and figure out a lot of this stuff. And we've got some really good evidence we want to share from there. Do you want to do videos first or EVPs?
Either case.
Let's do some videos first. Do you want to show, let's just talk about the flashlight.
Sure.
So one of the interesting ideas, one of the concepts is to have a flashlight on the ground away from you and to ask something to turn on or turn it off without anybody touching it. We're going to show you a kind of a little clip of the principle of how this works. The idea, scary ice machine. So flashlight has to have a connected circuit, right? And so in theory, something, an entity, a dead something, a ghost, could have an energy source. And so therefore, if you disconnect the circuit of a flashlight and you ask them to reconnect it, you could screw in the flashlight yourself. But if you unscrew the flashlight and you ask them to turn it on the count of 3, then the circuit's connected and you can ask them to turn it back off. So we want to show you some videos of how that works. So if you have a flashlight, it's that simple. You turn it to where it's barely unscrewed and you set it down, and we'll see some clips of this.
This is always weird in the show, so I'm just pull up the raw files here.
So what we like to do, a lot of people like to wander around with equipment. We usually like to try to get an area and be like, hey, we want real results. Let's put things static. We'll put an audio recording device where you could, in theory, have a recorded voice respond back. You listen back and there's something responding. But we also would use, like, put a K2 meter. We'll talk about this in a second, where an electromagnetic field, you kind of get yes or no questions being answered with this, and you have a flashlight there. So think about it, if you're sitting there at the center of the room, and you're like, okay, is there anybody in this room? They light up the K2 meter. Okay, can you light up the flashlight on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3, boom. They do it, and then when you play back, they're answering your questions on the recorder. That's 3 different sources of evidence nobody was touching in the center of the room, which is pretty neat.
So some of these that we're going to show you right now, actually, these were not from the museum. But these were from, if any of you are from Salt Lake County Library System, there's actually a number of haunted libraries that we've been able to investigate. Though the one we found the most at was one in West Jordan. It's the new library headquarters. It's called the Meridian Center. No reason it should be haunted. Brand new, but there's a big open space, about 7,500 square feet that they use for events. And these are some of the things we caught there.
And of course, most people think the old scary buildings are haunted or we have some of those spirits, but no one thinks of a brand new modern building like this.
Thank you for turning that light on.
So you can see we've been asking, and this is what we've tried to get the light on. So if you're seeing it on my screen, there's no one around. We've got a bunch of different devices around, but what we found was the spirits, entities, whatever you want to call it, can turn on lights, but it's difficult for them to turn on multiple lights and hold them there, and it's very, very difficult for them to then turn them off. So you'll see us asking that in this one.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was you. Go ahead and turn that flashlight off. We appreciate you turning it on.
Oh,
I'll
wow.
turn the other one on. That works too.
Thank you.
You can see as it flickers and struggles to try to keep all 3 on. And again, the connection is either there or it's not. It's not, battery shaking in a backpack. It should just turn on or not work at all. You can see how it's flickering trying to do that. And so, again,
Awesome,
those
okay.
batteries are some of the best things that we found.
There we go.
Now, if you look again, both of these start at the same, more or less the exact same time. There's the one in gray that's right here. I don't know how well you can see it. That one brightens up. If you look on this orange one at the exact same time, it's not as bright, it's dimmer, but it does start up at the same time.
There we go. That's two.
So we're going to talk about a few different things, but one of the things I want to talk about is false positives and what these things really are. I want to show you really quick. This is a spoon. Any of you ever heard of Uri Geller? Back in the day, made millions doing this. So you just go up and you tell people, look, you can just, it's metal, you can heat it up. And if you just focus on this and you just say bend and bend, you can start to bend that spoon and you can just bend it like that with your mind. And then it'd be like, look, and it's just a dumb magic trick, okay? But it's false positive, and if you're a believer and you expect it, you see things that maybe aren't really there. Why I bring this up is, especially with instruments like a K2 meter, whatever it really is, whatever the phenomenon is that responds with this equipment, some people are like, it's ghosts. Some people are like, it's evil spirits. Some people are like, it's who knows, right? Here's the thing. What we found is a lie. Okay? So you start talking, you're like, oh, you're in a haunted room and you see a spear on the wall. Did you use that spear? Yes. Were you killed by it? Yes. And you start to get these answers, this narrative going, and somebody else comes in and like, are you telling it, you know, if you call them out on it, they will lie. If it's almost like they're feeding into that you want a narrative, and you get that response.
We've actually got a video of that, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
In the museum, yeah, if we want.
Sure.
Let's try this one.
Well, it was interesting that Dino dances with wolves.
You may not be.
So the situation with this, we were investigating a museum, I'll clip it down to where it needs to go. And maybe Ben, if you want to kind of cycle through and see it's through those on those. We were in a museum, and we were with a gentleman who wanted us to investigate his house. And we were doing a ghost event similar to this at the museum. And he thought, oh, well, maybe I can find, you know, this spirit of this little girl in my house, maybe she'll follow us. And she would have been born in Utah, you know, pioneer times. And so we were in the museum and we were asking her these questions, and, you know, on the K2 meters, everything was just yes, yes, it was just perfect, all the answers you wanted. And it seemed a little too perfect. And so then we started talking and throwing some things to see what would happen. And so I'm like, oh, you were a pioneer in Utah. Did you come across on the transcontinental steamship line? Well, obviously you can't have a transcontinental steamship, right? And oh, yes, I did. And then we're like, oh, were you here the year it was so cold that Brigham Young rode a polar bear down from the mountain to rescue the Mormon saints? Oh, yeah, I was here for that. And we're like, okay, this is bullcrap. And then the whole spirit of the room changed as we realized we weren't talking to this supposed little girl. And then the answers and the aggression started to get much worse. So that's kind of what's going on in this.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it in years. I didn't know we had it on.
Yeah, I don't know where it is on that one.
Yeah, okay.
But so basically, there's a few ideas. I want to show you some of the equipment. We should show some of the EVPs.
Okay.
So an EVP has been around for over 100 years. It's the idea that you can record a voice that you don't necessarily hear. You might hear it, but you might not hear it. Then you play it back later and you hear it. So if you're having a conversation, you can record with your phone, and you might hear these voices back later. And we consistently have in the museum, and they've gotten stronger and stronger and clearer. They're totally predictable. We always get this old man voice. Do the ring some sweets. That one's it.
All right. And again, it's always tough. You can listen to this and be like, I don't hear anything. When we're doing it, we're cleaning it up, we're listening to it, you know, with specialized things so we can really focus on. But bring some sweets and maybe after you can tell kind of.
It is interesting because in this hall we used to have, there was a guy who was killed as a horse thief, and before he did, the doctor down and said, hey, can I buy your body for science? And he's like, well, sure, I'm going to die, so it doesn't matter. What do you want? He's like, give me a jar of candy. I want to eat that before I die. And this is where there was an exhibit where he was in this town. So,
And we were going through it being like, hey, if anyone's here, is there anything we can do for you? And this is the answer we got back.
You hear footsteps, we hear some voice saying, bring some sweets.
Turn it down a little bit.
So we didn't hear that, but we played it back after we did that.
So it's a little while, especially the sweets at the end.
Now, same kind of voice down in the basement there. There was this girl from an investigation group who came and she was sitting in a rocking chair and she's like, here, somebody touch my arms. If there's anybody here, touch my arms. And all of a sudden, her chair scooted to the side, and let's do the I'm not a pervert first. Because she got mad. She's like, what are you, a pervert or something? Beating on a lady? And we get this voice saying, now doesn't that sound like the Bring Some Sweets voice? It's like, yeah, I'm not a pervert. You were asking me to touch your arms, and I did.
But honestly, if anything you could hear on a paranormal investigation, that's not too bad. I'm okay with that.
Let's do the I might come. Oh, this do I might come with you. We were like, I think I'm gonna go upstairs, and this voice says, I might come with you.
That's what. Turn that up a little bit.
Like that at all.
Do the weird dead one. This was in the top room. Some people said it sounds like you're dead, but this was when nobody was in the room. We just let the recorder going, and it sounds like it's saying we're dead.
You sure are, buddy.
Yes, you are. We kind of think it. That's why we're dead. But that's the tip top room in the Hutchings Museum. So ask me now. That was okay. That was creepy. We were in the basement. The same lady when she got touched on her arms, and it scooted her rocking chair sideways, and we started hearing this scratching going box to box around the storage room, and I'm like, and I think I'm talking about it, and it's boosted up when it says so ask me now. We're like, quit making the electrical box pop up. Where are you now? You know, and you'll hear it say, so ask me now. It's pretty boosted when it says so ask me.
Yeah, there's about 5 degrees up on it. It's gone. Are you behind me by the shelves now?
You gotta do that. You gotta boost that one part. So I forgot. So they have a thermometer, laser thermometer, and it's like a 5-degree drop behind me, and then it says, so ask me now.
Yeah, there's about 5 degrees up on it. It's gone. Are you behind me by the shelves now?
It's kind of hard to hear, but you hear it. It's like, so ask me now.
Are you behind me by the shelves?
Do the swearing one. When she's like, this was that same lady who kept like, touch my arms. Oh, what are you, a pervert? Here, come talk to me. Oh, somebody scooted my chair. And she's like, so we calm her down. She's like, that is so cool. And a voice swears at her. Clearly. Not very polite. I'm like, okay, we didn't hear that, but the audio recorder has that voice. So that was, let's see. Please. Let's see, what's a really good one? We do the help me. Oh, help me is right before I think she got touched on her arms. One more up.
Someone's touching me in here.
You hear that? So do it again. So somebody said,
Someone's touching me in here.
so she got touched on the arm, but right before something said, help me.
Someone's touching me in here.
if everybody's like, let's go to jail, somebody hung themselves there, let's do equipment there, then we would just go to the other end of the museum, put our stuff on the ground and wait, and all of a sudden, woo, it's going off, and we're like, so one time we're like, did you come in here to get away from all those other people? This old man always goes, yes. And we'll see if we get that. Yeah, get away from it.
Did you come in here to get away from everyone and have some privacy?
Try boosting that one more time again.
Did you come in here to get away from everyone and have some privacy?
It's like, and what we found, we dialed it in enough, there was all kinds of weird stuff. And here's one of the things we found. One of the theories is that like certain rocks or certain minerals, if you're around that in a location, you'll have more activity. Well, what we found out, at the museum, we have a flint knapping club that once a month meets, and they're making stone arrowheads and spearheads. They're taking obsidian, glass, silica, and they're grind, hit, and so the whole museum is filled with silica dust. And if we did an investigation after that, we'd always get way better evidence. So, kind of lend some credence to it. Should we do equipment?
Yeah, let's do equipment, and I'm going to I'll pull up the full body apparition.
Okay.
Easy.
Okay, so a few of these. So first thing of equipment, this is called a K2 meter. Obviously it's not made for ghost hunting. Right, it's meant to find polarized and unpolarized magnetic fields. So in theory, if there was a magnetic field that was out of whack or wires that were ungrounded, then this is going to light up. We've got some of these for you to try out. But if you're walking around with these, you could be like, oh, hey, I found something. But your best evidence is if you go somewhere and put it down and you ask and you say, hey, look, we're here. We just want some conversation if someone or something's here. If you touch this, it might light up. And if they light up, you light up on the count of 3, then say, okay, now you've established you can have kind of a yes or no. And say, hey, can we ask you questions? Yes is lighting up, no is nothing. That's how we like to use them, and we like to use them static so that there's no interference, so it makes your evidence a bit more trustworthy. But again, if you think you have something responding, that doesn't mean it's telling the truth. So if you feel unsafe with something, tell them to go away or just walk away from it. That's what we usually say. We do have a thermal imaging camera, which this you just push this button on the side here. You hold it down for a second, and basically the spectrum that it goes in is just thermal imaging. You're just seeing into the heat and cold spectrum. We have seen both. We have seen things that appear kind of like a living thing, that you're looking at, there's nothing there, and yet you see a heat signature. But we've also seen the opposite. We've most definitely seen things colder, black, on here. It's colder than the ambient temperature around. It takes a while to calibrate, but you can kind of see. I don't know if you can see that. So you guys are all pretty familiar with how that works. So that is available for you. So I'm going to turn it on so you can see the battery. But that's kind of a cool one. We do have some night vision. They've been charging. Very important if you use these. If you do not want to go blind, do not look in this end. It looks like you're going to go blind. Okay? You look in this end, not this end. This end. So you just press the on button, hold it down, and then you can see into a spectrum that's you basically have night vision. We've got a few of those. We have different thoughts on these. These are called dowsing rods. We got some of these. Now some people full on are like, hey, look, there's our ghost point at it, right? The idea is supposed to be if they cross, that you're getting an answer. So it's kind of like a K2 meter, the response. Here's a really weird thing. I'm just going to give you my opinion on these. They work, or they're not for the reason you think. If you're using them and you ask a question like, what's my favorite dinosaur or something tonight, is it Dilophosaurus? Then they cross. So kind of what you are thinking the answer will be, whether it's through waves or whatever, micro vibrations, you make it cross if you know the answer, or if you're hyper-focused on it not moving, okay? But some people say quite the opposite, that, you know, something else can cross them for you. So if you use these, we got several of them, whatever you believe. I think these are fascinating even if you don't believe them, because you can get it to give answers even if you're totally not a believer. I don't believe these tell me where a ghost is, and yet I use them and it's like, have you tried them out? And it's like, oh my gosh, whoop, gives answers. But for these, you want to hold it a little bit apart like that and point it down slightly. Then you ask a question, and if they cross, that's your yes. Okay? Those are dowsing rods. We've got some of those. Again, remember flashlights. If you have a flashlight, just unscrew it a little to where it's barely off. Put it down, and ask if something will do it on the count of 3. Ironically, one of our favorites is just to do knocks. We just do shave and a haircut, and it works. If you go in a building or something, you go by windows and you think something's going on, then you're like, hey, we're gonna play a game. This is shave and a haircut. It goes. So we're gonna do the, and then you do the, and you ask them, and they'll do it. You just go and listen, and sometimes you get the response. Dumb as it sounds, we get so many responses with that.
And that's the fun thing when we come out and do these classes. So many people get, worried. They're like, oh gosh, I have to spend a fortune getting all this equipment. Not at all. One of my best pieces that I collect evidence on, I've got a device for epilepsy implanted in me. It's like a pacemaker that runs my brain instead of my heart. Anytime there's like ghosts around or whatever, and we've got all of our different devices going off, I'll like step into it. And all of a sudden this starts shocking me in a very unique way that it is not designed to do. And then as soon as I step out, it's like, okay, no, goes back to
There's
normal.
like a cold spot. We did that at one at the